Today we will fly with a Korean airline that may have two very interesting years ahead. But is it worth flying today? Join me on my round trip in Asiana's business class between Frankfurt, Germany and Incheon, South Korea to see what the second biggest airline in Korea has to offer. This is my first Asiana flight since 2019 and 2020 when I flew the same route in economy class. Since then I have flown business class in Lufthansa and Emirates between Germany and South Korea. So let's see how Asiana stacks up on the route 5 years later. Our journey starts at Frankfurt International Airport and at the Lufthansa Business Lounge. Since Asiana is a Star Alliance member, business class passengers can access the Lufthansa lounges. In this case, I find myself in Lufthansa Business Lounge B-Ost, not too far from our departure gate B42. The lounge is relatively roomy with a decent selection of drinks and snacks and fitting to the season some Christmas pastries. Fortunately, the lounge is pretty empty since it's a Sunday afternoon, so after some recharging, I make my way to the gate with boarding already in progress. Entering the cabin, the Asiana signature colors greet us. The general design and feel of the cabin are probably a thing of individual preference, and I will admit that it's not the color palette I would have chosen, but at least it has its own personality. Today we are flying one of Asiana's 15 Airbus A350-900s with its 1-to-1 business Smartium configuration. Due to the layout, all seats have direct aisle access. My seat is 4A, one of the individual window seats on the left side of the plane. Of the single seats, only the even seat numbers point to the window and thus give a bit more privacy. So if you're flying alone, consider choosing either seats A or K in the rows 2, 4 or 6. If we look at the other airlines on the route from Frankfurt to Incheon, this is actually a big deal. Although Korean Air is flying a 2-2-2 configuration, all of their seats also have direct aisle access. However, Lufthansa currently only seems to fly its more than 20-year-old Boeing 747-400 on this route with a 2-3-2 configuration on the lower deck and a 2-2 configuration on the upper deck. I had the option to book this flight, but I decided against it because of the rather outdated product and my rather mixed experience with Lufthansa crews in the past. Lufthansa seems to only fly their A350-900s from Munich to Incheon these days, which comes in a 2-2-2 configuration. With their new Allegris cabin not having rolled out on this route yet, the product of the A350-900 is just fine. However, having flown it twice between Germany and South Korea, I find it particularly lacking in privacy, not only due to the 2-2-2 configuration, but also due to the seat design. Considering that Korean Air's prices for the route are a bit higher during this time and Lufthansa flies with a rather inconvenient product, Asiana is a legitimate competitor. But let's jump back into the plane to see how the Asiana product holds up. At the seat we find the Aigner Amenity kit. For disclosure, I don't usually mind Amenity kits. If I need something, I try to bring it to the flight. That being said, if you don't bring anything, the Amenity kit gives you all the common necessities. That includes a sleeping mask, hand cream, facial cream, lip balm, toothbrush and toothpaste, earplugs, some very cheap socks and Asiana's signature hair comb. All of this comes in a rather simple fabric bag that is quite awkward to open. At the table you also find a decent pair of slippers. I didn't use them during my flight, but they served me well for about 2.5 weeks in my Airbnb. Besides that, you will find additional dental and shaving kits, mouthwash, hand cream and linen mist in the bathrooms. Unfortunately, the bathrooms did not seem to be cleaned properly before departure. Checking the bathrooms during boarding, I noticed toilet paper in the toilet and on the floor. That's not great, but I can at least appreciate that the amenities have been restacked, something that was missing from Lufthansa flights on the route before. The return flight will be an interesting comparison, so keep watching until the end. Back at the seat, you can definitely see some wear and tear, but the seat is generally fine and relatively clean. In the meantime, we are taxiing to the runway and without much delay we depart at 5:53 p.m. The menus for the flight are handed out about 20 minutes after takeoff. Asiana traditionally serves a Korean dish and a choice of Western dishes which you cannot mix and match. For this flight and in anticipation of returning to Korea, I choose the Korean menu. I'm no expert on the matter of spirits, but I go with the champagne to celebrate my first Asiana business class flight. Besides, as a studied philosopher, I can appreciate finding a Plato quote on the drink menu. The first course starts with prawns and champagne. The plate does not look all too exciting, and perhaps the best thing you can say about it is that it's a light start to the meal service. The main course is a bibimbap, a traditional Korean dish in which you mix rice with a variety of side dishes. Of course, this is a matter of taste, but for an in-flight meal, I think a bibimbap is pretty nicely balanced. The meal is finished with a not particularly impressive plate of fruits and some jelly with a sweet rice cake. I'm not someone who takes a business class flight for its meal service and have nothing to complain about the dishes, but admittedly this is also nothing worth remembering, especially as Lufthansa is serving basically the same bibimbap on their flights out of Incheon. What is an actual issue though is that Asiana is currently not allowing for any special meal requests on their Frankfurt to Incheon flights, so if you have any dietary limitations, this may be something to consider. After the meal, there is more than enough time to sleep on this 11-hour flight that is avoiding Russian airspace. The seat turns into a lie-flat bed, which is quite comfortable. Generally, I would consider the seat to be on the softer end of the spectrum. Although Asiana does not provide an extra mattress pad, the seat makes for a decent bed with its provided pillow and blanket. The table area on the side offers more privacy than more open seat designs, although it is certainly no suite. However, with the bed in a lie-flat state, you really realize the lack of storage room. You basically only have the table next to you to put your stuff. You can put a backpack or personal item beside you on the floor, but that blocks access to get out of bed quite a bit. In comparison, on the individual aisle seats, you can store your luggage at the window, which makes it easier to get out of bed. Any other YouTube video would probably show you the in-flight entertainment now, but I must admit that I rarely ever watch anything during a flight. The selection looks a bit small, but good enough to find some distraction, I assume. My screen was a bit buggy, sometimes flashing up while I was sleeping, but not too horribly bad either. One thing that I do appreciate in flight is decent Wi-Fi though. The Wi-Fi comes in 3 different packages at different prices. Wi-Fi is not included for business class passengers at this time. However, if you get the full flight Wi-Fi service, you will get 24-hour access, meaning that the plan will also work on connecting flights within 24 hours. Now, here is an important trick that not even the crew was able to give me, and that may apply not only to this flight, but many others on other airlines as well. After connecting to the Wi-Fi network, nothing happened for me. I was not prompted to sign in anywhere, and when I opened the browser on my phone, it didn't load any page. You might have experienced something similar on flights in the past, at least I did. What you can do on an iOS device is to open the network settings and search for the router address. This should give you something that looks like this. If you copy and paste this address into your browser, it should redirect you to the correct site to buy or check your Wi-Fi status. The same should be true for other operating systems and airlines, so make sure to check this if you cannot automatically log into the network. Generally, the Wi-Fi quality on the flight is pretty good. It is even enough for a short video call. One nice feature of the seat is that the tray can turn towards the front, giving you easier aisle access even during the meal service. And talking of such, the next round of dishes is served about 2 hours before arrival. The breakfast at around 10 AM Korean Standard Time starts with some fruits, a yogurt and selection of pastries. The pastries are quite nice, but it might also just be my weakness for baked goods in general. This is followed up by an omelette with some ham, broccoli and hash browns. Nothing too special either, but it's certainly filling. After the meal is before the exercise. The Asiana stretching instructions are a nice touch to what feels like a greater Asiana experience. Maybe it's just the color theme of the cabin or the crew outfits, but Asiana always feels like its own thing. Whether that's good or bad is probably a question of personal preference, but I personally very much appreciate having the option of direct flights from my home airport to Incheon with Asiana. And with that, we are already in Korea. This gives us a last look at the seats and then a final goodbye to our aircraft for this flight. Incheon International Airport is decently organized and luckily few flights are arriving alongside us, so immigration is quick and without any complications. Despite the quick immigration, after a short bathroom break, the luggage is already arriving at the baggage claim, making the experience at Incheon a very short but convenient one. However, if you plan to go to South Korea yourself, I recommend doing one more thing before you rush out of the baggage claim and airport. Whatever you plan to do in South Korea, mobile data on your phone will be super helpful and data roaming from your local provider may be way too expensive. What I've been using in all of Asia for the last few years is an eSIM by Airalo. They have a super convenient plan for 18 countries in Asia called AsiaLink. Amongst other countries, you can use the eSIM in South Korea, Japan and Hong Kong, and it's actually cheaper and more convenient than the local plans. So even if you only go to Korea, the AsiaLink plan may be the most efficient one. Just make sure that your phone is compatible with Airalo and eSIMs. Then it should only take a few minutes to set up, which you can easily do you on the airport Wi-Fi, or even more conveniently before you go on your travels at home. I've partnered up with AirRaylo to give you some extra discounts. You will find the discount and the link in the description below, which I will update in the future to make sure you get the best deal whenever you watch this video. Make sure to get the eSIM before your next trip so you can be ready to go as soon as you arrive. I've only had good experiences with their plans and customer service and can genuinely recommend that you get their plan for your next trip. Once you have your mobile data, you can make your way out of Incheon, assuming that you're headed to Seoul like me. You have two main options to get from Incheon International Airport to the city of Seoul. The cheaper option is via the train. However, depending on where you plan to go in Seoul, you will have to change to different metro lines. This can be quite inconvenient for you and the regular passengers if you're traveling with luggage during rush hours. My personal preference is to take the Limousine bus from the airport. This is quite a bit more expensive in relative terms, but with 17,000 won or 10 to 12 US dollars or euros, still affordable in absolute terms. You can get your bus ticket at self-service kiosks or info counters right outside of the baggage claim. I'm taking the 6002 bus, which is dropping me off at Ewha Women's University Station, less than 5 minutes away from my Airbnb. Having arrived in Seoul, it's time to quickly assess the flight. I think Asiana holds up well compared to its competitors on the route. Everything is just decent. The seats are decent, the crew is nice and friendly, the amenities are fine, and the food is not bad at all. This is probably not the type of flight that you may seek as a bucket list item, such as going on an A380 business class bar on Emirates or Qatar Airways, or flying first class with Singapore Airlines. But if the price is right and you find a good connection with Asiana, it's a very solid option. Now, things will change with Asiana in the future. If you haven't heard the news, Korean Air bought up Asiana in December 2024. This means that the biggest and second biggest Korean airlines will soon become one. The merger has been in the works for years and didn't materialize due to antitrust concerns. Now it has been accepted under the condition that the Korean low-cost carrier T-Way is taking up some of the direct flights between Europe and Incheon, including non-stop flights from and to Frankfurt. I personally have only ever flown T-Way between Korea and Japan on relatively short 3-hour flights, but I never had any issues with them. I also got some first-hand reports from the direct flights between Frankfurt and Incheon on T-Way's economy class, which were positive too. However, with the merger, Star Airlines will most likely lose its only Korean airline, strengthening its competitor SkyTeam, of which Korean Air is a part. So even if T-Way is providing a decent economy class and business class product, it will lack in terms of lounge access and collecting alliance miles or status. As someone whose home airline is Lufthansa, and thus by extension Star Airlines, I find this really unfortunate. However, as of now, the merger will only take full effect in 2 years, and with Asiana still very proudly presenting their Star Alliance membership in 2025, this may be an opportunity to benefit from the perks of their alliance for the next 2 years. Not 2 years, but rather 2 weeks later, it's time to wrap up this trip by going back to Incheon with the 6002 bus at roughly 5 AM from Ewha Women's University Station. If you plan to take the bus back to the airport, make sure to check the schedule. The buses are not operating all day, but take a break between roughly 9 PM and 11 PM, and then from 11 PM to 4 AM. However, the 6002 bus is already running every 10 minutes starting at 4 AM, which is really convenient for our 9 AM flight from Incheon. To take the bus back to the airport, you can simply use your public transport card. Just make sure that you still have the necessary amount loaded on your card. About an hour later, we arrive at a very busy Incheon International Airport on a Friday at 6 AM. The Asiana counters are all the way at the end of the entrance hall with a separate section for first and business class passengers. The area is not much more than just a veneer, but it's a nice touch anyway. After checking in, it's time to stand in the line for the security check, and a long line it is. The whole process takes me about 45 minutes with no priority security check as far as I can see. After security, we can seek one of the Asiana lounges. In my case, the closest one is the Asiana Central Business Lounge, which you can access via an escalator. I've been to this lounge 2 times before as a business class passenger on Lufthansa and Emirates, and given that so many passengers have access to the lounge, it is expectedly busy. I always considered the Asiana Business Lounge at Incheon decent. I never really connected to the food and drink selection, but it's good enough to rest for a bit and rehydrate. What I do like a lot about the lounge are its shower rooms though. Right upon my arrival, I ask for the keys. I'm told to deposit my boarding pass for an alarm that will notify me when the shower is available. Despite the busy lounge, not much later I'm getting the key to shower room number 1. The room is clean and provides the most necessary amenities. You're asked to only use the showers for 20 minutes, and thus after getting a quick refreshment, I'm ready for our approaching 13.5-hour flight back to Germany. Arriving at the gate, I find myself the first in line for the priority check-in, making this the first time I board as the first person on the flight. With some extra excitement, I make my way to the same A350 cabin from the first flight. Being the first passenger on board also allows me a quick glimpse at the economy class in its 333 configuration. The crew is pretty surprised to see me peeking into economy class, but reacts with a laugh when I say that I just want to have a quick look.
I just wanted to see, sorry.
Their chill reaction should be a preview of the crew in general, which will be the main story of this flight. Boarding in daylight gives a better view of the same seat. This time I'm sitting on the other side, but still at the window on seat 4K. I also have a quick look at the bathroom before takeoff, which seems cleaned this time, although not super well cleaned. However, and I think this is noteworthy, during the flight I see that a crew member themselves is cleaning the bathroom again, which I've actually never seen before, just to add to an already amazing service during the flight. Back from the bathroom, I get an extra glimpse at the middle seats, which are both quite okay. You can choose 2 seats next to each other, with the tables on the outsides for more intimacy, or 2 seats separated by the tables in the middle, giving you more privacy from the other passenger in the middle seat. The amenities are basically the same as on the first flight, though the amenity kit is a different color, making it a bit of a collectible item. The seat is generally clean, but some spots could take an extra wipe, which I take care of myself. But all in all, everything is fine. Soon after, we are taxiing to the runway, giving us a departure time of 9:15 AM for our extra long flight, avoiding Russian airspace once more. Interestingly, both flights have quite a bit of turbulence, which I'm not sure is related to the adjusted route. If you have any better idea why these 2 flights seem to have some extra turbulence, please let me know in the comments. Not too long after departure, the crew takes orders for the meal service. I missed my window for a vegan meal request the day before, so I go with the Western menu this time. The Korean menu would have been a sambap, a dish where you wrap different side dishes in leafy greens. In my case, I go with the salmon steak on the Western menu and another champagne. Notably, Asiana does not hand out hot towels, but only pre-packaged wipes. The wipes are fine, and Asiana is certainly not the only airline that has not handed out hot towels post-pandemic, but it's something to note. The crew seems to be struggling a bit with serving both aisles, where the left aisle seems to receive their meals quite a bit earlier throughout the flight. However, the crew does not get tired of saying that they are sorry for the delays that are really not that bad. Something that I could not imagine hearing from a Lufthansa crew, to be honest. The meals are all decent, despite me learning that I really don't like their gorgonzola. Perhaps nothing too memorable besides that, but everything seems maybe a bit nicer considering that Asiana can use the food provider from their home airport. After the meal service, I'm already asked to order my second meal, which is served just 4 to 5 hours later. I opt for the beef stew, a bit confused that all courses are served in the first 6 to 7 hours of a 13.5-hour flight. So it's time for a 4-hour nap to the next meal. The lunch is fine again, although I realize that mashed potatoes seems to become a recurring theme on these Asiana flights, which I'm not mad about at all. After some more napping, I decide to order one of the snacks on the menu about 2 hours before landing. The croissant sandwich is nothing too impressive either, but nice as a snack nonetheless. Before landing, I want to highlight the crew once more. I've heard this in other airline reviews where people say that their in-flight experience hinges on the service during the flight. I never really got this until this day. The crew on this flight just made me realize that I never had an impressive service before. Having flown mostly Lufthansa business class, I just took German service as a baseline. I knew I was never really happy with Lufthansa besides some exceptions, and service on Emirates flights was just fine, but this crew made me feel like they genuinely enjoyed working this flight. They were considerate, kind, and even joyful and playful with the kids on board. The flight had all the potential to be bad, with a bunch of children on board, quite some turbulence, and being a relatively long daytime flight. And despite all the crying and screaming of the children, it felt like the crew made the best of the whole trip. I don't want to say that this is an Asiana quality per se, as the crew on the first flight was a bit more reserved, although kind, but this crew is definitely worth highlighting. After a long flight, we are slowly approaching landing. Interestingly, Asiana is using a 3-point belt, which I don't recall having had on other flights before. With a smooth landing, we taxied to the gate and deboard quickly, making for a goodbye to our aircraft of today. The way to the baggage claim takes quite a while from our gate and the luggage is arriving with a slight delay, but after about 15 minutes of waiting, the priority luggage arrives. Being back in Germany, it's time for a final review of this round trip. I'm glad I choose Asiana over its competitors. I think it makes for a genuinely good product on this route, although it might not be a standout either. Asiana still has its own character and will be dearly missed if or when it leaves Star Alliance and completes its merger with Korean Air. But assuming this may take another 2 years, I will be glad to book another business class flight with them in the future. However, there will be some interesting developments for passengers flying between Germany and South Korea. How will T-Way's hard and soft product match Korean Air and Lufthansa in the mid to long run? Can Lufthansa's Allegris cabin make the route more competitive again? This all will be interesting to see with and after the merger. If you want to see any further reviews on this route, please let me know in the comments. Maybe it's time to give the T-Way business class a try or to fly with Finnair via Helsinki, which seems to be trying to get some European market share for the destination Incheon. I can already tell you that the next videos will be worth checking out as well, with Cathay Pacific business class flights to Hong Kong, Osaka and Frankfurt. So make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you won't miss any future videos. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next one.